Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now get cozy, take a deep breath, let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. Let's begin. There's a fungus in the sea that doesn't stay there. I knew it was them the moment I saw the envelope. On it, my name handwritten in black ink. It was waiting on my desk when I returned from lecture, tucked beneath a folder I hadn't touched in years. The others thought it was a grant letter. One of my colleagues joked that I finally sold my soul to Big Pharma. If only he knew. I laughed along. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I got home, locked the door, turned off the lights. I slid a knife under the flap and peeled it open. Inside was a single sentence printed on a thick card. You are requested for field analysis at Site AV. Nothing else except for a faded red stamp, a white trident piercing upward from beneath the waves. The order. My hands went cold. I sat on the kitchen floor for nearly an hour, card in one hand, breath caught somewhere between my ribs. I promised I wouldn't, I whispered. I thought I'd left it all behind. They said one final mission and you're out. But I guess they tricked me, like they do with everyone. They don't threaten you, but they gently remind you that you still owe them, that they know what you did in Madagascar, that someone, somewhere, still has the unredacted footage, that your sister's college tuition wasn't a miracle after all. The next morning, a courier delivered a package with nothing but a burner phone inside. It buzzed the moment I took it from him. A voice spoke through the static. You will be escorted to Site AV within 48 hours. Your credentials have been reinstated. Bring no outside electronics. You will be briefed en route. This anomaly has been designated REDALGAE. I didn't say a word. There was nothing I could really say. Before the call ended, the voice added something else. Oh, and Iris, official records list the town as uninhabited. Disregard local activity and don't engage unless authorized. I held the phone until the call cut. Afterwards, I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I packed. Not much, just what I really needed. Gloves, notebooks, a flashlight. I left my laptop, my real phone. Left the necklace my sister gave me. No personal items, nothing that might compromise emotional clarity, as the order put it. Exactly 48 hours later, I was in the back of a van with no windows. The air smelled faintly of ammonia and cold metal. The walls were lined with that typical dull, institutional gray the order loved to follow. Two others sat with me, a man and woman, both armored. Guards clearly with order-issued weapons and black masks clipped to their belts. One of them glanced at me a few times before speaking up. You're Iris, right? He asked. I didn't answer at first, then nodded. Was, I replied. He nodded back, quiet for a moment. I didn't think they'd pull you back in, not after the incident in Madagascar. I looked away, slightly ashamed. He must have realized how it sounded because he added, still alive. That's what matters. The woman next to him unzipped a flat pouch and handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a thick briefing file and a single-page mission card. The first line read, Site AV, active environmental anomaly. Protocol, brine burst. I flipped through the pages as the van rattled along the gravel road. The report was stitched together from field notes, satellite analysis, and biohazard logs. I won't bore you with all the details. Here's the important part. There was an outbreak of an anomalous marine fungus resembling red algae in a coastal town. Symptoms include tissue degradation, behavioral regression, vocal disruption, and systemic mutation. The town was designated uninhabited, and a quarantine perimeter was enforced. Satellite images were falsified. Civilians were listed as relocated. I turned the page and felt my stomach drop. 83 confirmed casualties, 12 unrecovered. The subjects remained in a degenerative state with their vocal cords either ruptured or restructured. Their behavior was listed as erratic but not overly hostile. The objective was simple: to collect fungal samples, assess the mutation, and determine what was the main cause of the outbreak. At the bottom of the briefing, a single line was handwritten in red ink. "We only ask because we can't afford to lose any more of our own." I closed the file and sat in silence for the rest of the ride. We reached the outskirts of the town just before dawn. The van slowed to a crawl, and I saw a checkpoint ahead, or what remained of it. Chain-link fencing bent inwards like something had pressed against it. A sandbagged guard post half collapsed. The town itself was a mess. Roofs collapsed, the order's insignia burned off the side of a metal panel, windows shattered with dried blood coloring them red. It was a surreal sight. This is what true abandonment looks like. The van stopped and the guards moved first. I stepped out after, my boots sinking into the mud below. The air hit me hard, filled with salt, rot, and something sweeter. The algae, I thought to myself. Ahead, the road led into the town, narrow streets lined with leaning lampposts. I spotted the algae within seconds, though it wasn't hard. It was growing up the sides of buildings, bleeding from the edges of alleyways, and scattered all over the ground. In some places it pulsed faintly like a slow heartbeat. My escort spoke through his mask. "Stay on the marked paths. We'll enter the city center first." I nodded, my eyes scanning everything. It was a sad sight to see schools, parks, and swing sets uninhabited. "Do people still live here?" I asked. The guard hesitated, tilting his head slightly. "Officially number and unofficially." He didn't answer. We moved deeper into the town, boots splashing through puddles laced with a red hue. We passed a general store with broken glass in the doorway. Inside, I saw algae wrapped around the shelves like it had grown from within. Then the first signs of movement. Something shifted 2 blocks down. A figure resembling a human with a bent spine shuffled across the fog. It didn't look at us, just shuffled into the mist. One of the guards raised his weapon. "Don't!" I said sharply. He lowered it. "I wasn't going to. Not unless it gets closer." We continued in silence, the fog thickening as we moved between crumbling buildings. A house-marked primary infection site came into view, the door barely hanging on. "We'll keep watch," the woman said. 10 minutes. I entered fast, and the smell instantly hit me, making me gag. Red algae covered the walls and floor, thick like meat. Although I took all the necessary precautions, this amount of exposure does pose a substantial threat. I crouched, scraped a sample into a vial. It twitched. From the other room, I heard a door creak. I froze, looking into the direction of the noise, which suddenly transformed into a gurgling sound. I held still. Something was on the other side, shuffling and dragging itself across the floor. The gurgling shifted into a wet, rasping breath followed by something that might have been a short word, but I couldn't make it out. I slowly moved down the hallway, careful not to make any sudden movement or sound. The rasping stopped, but something else appeared just beyond the frame of the doorway at the end of the hall. I saw a shadow twitching, approaching me from the dark. I held my breath. Then it appeared. Its head was covered in algae, the skin stretching over something luminous underneath, as if it had swallowed a light source. It didn't have any hair, its features distorted. One of its arms dragged behind it, fused at the elbow with a slick growth that twitched like it was alive. Crack! A broken tile beneath me squirmed. Fuck! The thing jerked toward me with a speed that didn't match its broken frame. I stumbled back, now faster because it was too late to be cautious. I screamed, don't remember what, for the guards to come inside. They burst through the doorway as the infected thing lunged, its throat gurgling with anticipation. I closed my eyes and heard gunfire, which only staggered the beast. I scrambled to the side as one of the guards pulled me back by my collar, dragging me outside as the second one emptied another clip. He didn't wait to check if it was down. Instead, he turned and ordered us to retreat. Behind him, other figures were already emerging. 2, maybe 3, I wasn't sure. All of them were covered in the same pulsing red growth, like the algae had hollowed them out and was wearing them like skin. "Don't get distracted," the woman shouted. "Back to the vehicle now." By the time we made it back to the van and sealed the doors, I was gasping for air, masked, slick with sweat. One of the guards checked my suit for any breaches while the other cursed under her breath. "They weren't supposed to be this close to the perimeter," the woman muttered. "We'll report it to base. No point in arguing about it now," the man replied. I reached for my sample kit and looked at the sealed vial, the one I had taken from the wall inside. It was glowing, faintly, but I was sure of it. The driver sped off, tires slicing through the algae-covered mud. He swerved the car a few times, I assume avoiding the creatures which gathered there due to the commotion. "They're pursuing," the driver said over comms. "I see movement on the rooftops." Rooftops? The guards opened the rear doors to look. There were at least 5 or 6 of them coming after us, though it was hard to see in the fog. One of them had climbed onto a collapsed home and watched us from afar. They weren't fast at all, but extremely relentless. They didn't stop, like the algae had pushed them to their maximum, pulsing behind them with every step. A few of them slammed into the van, tilting the vehicle for a moment, tires slipping in the mud. Luckily, the driver held control. Through the fog, I saw pale yellow floodlights. The checkpoint. The gate opened just in time for us to slip through it, stopping inside the quarantine garage. A hydraulic door slammed shut behind us. I finally let out a breath of relief, something I couldn't for the last few minutes. "Everyone out. Contamination protocol." The garage flooded with sterilizing mist as we stepped out, coughing slightly under the chemical spray. Inside it was colder than I remembered. We passed through triage. A technician peeled off the outer layers of my gear and stuck me with a needle before I could object. "Blood sample," she muttered. "What did you bring back?" "Enough," I said and lifted the sample case. "More than enough. Good job. We'll process it from here." That was it. No more questions, no debriefing, nothing. Eventually, they told me I was clear. There was no breach or visible symptoms, so I could go. The van that dropped me off wasn't the same one that picked me up. This one had windows at least. My clothes were returned in a vacuum-sealed bag. "Where do I go now?" I asked the driver before I stepped outside. He shrugged. "Wherever you please, but don't forget you were never here." 2 weeks later, I was back in the lecture hall explaining fungal adaptations in extreme climates when my voice faltered. It was too similar. The slide behind me showed a microscopic image of a lichen colony. I thought it pulsed, even though it couldn't. It was a still image, after all. The students didn't notice. They were half asleep, phones in hand or zoning out entirely. I moved on. After class, I walked back to my office, heart beating a bit too fast. I told myself it was stress, nothing more. But something was on my desk. Another envelope, same handwriting in the same black ink. I didn't open it right away this time either, but again, I knew what it meant. The same overwhelming feeling of despair came over me. The order wasn't done with me and probably won't be. Story 1 ends here. Now, let's begin story 2. The perfect Tuesday. The last truly perfect night of my life was a Tuesday. I didn't know it at the time, of course. You never do. It was just a normal Tuesday. I remember the smell of garlic and basil hanging in the air from the pasta Tessa had made for dinner. I remember the sound of our son Caleb shrieking with laughter as I chased him around the living room coffee table, his little feet slapping against the hardwood floor. It was that perfect kind of ordinary chaos. After his bath, he smelled like lavender soap and damp hair, and he was warm and heavy in my arms as I read him a story about a bear who couldn't sleep. Tessa was already on the couch when I came out, scrolling through her phone with her feet tucked under her. The TV was on, some home renovation show we weren't really watching. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge. I sat down next to her and she rested her head on my shoulder. This was it. This was everything. That simple, quiet peace after the whirlwind of a toddler's bedtime. "You're smiling," she murmured, not looking up from her phone. "Just happy," I said. She looked up at me then. "Yeah? What about?" And right then, it happened. As I opened my mouth to answer, a crystal-clear memory that wasn't a memory at all played in my head. I saw myself saying, "This, just this." I saw her smile. I saw myself reach for the glass of water on the coffee table and saw my hand knock it over, a dark circle spreading across the oak wood. The vision was so real, so complete that I flinched. "Owen, you okay?" Tessa's voice pulled me back. I stared at her, my heart suddenly beating way too fast. I hadn't answered her yet. The water was still on the table, untouched. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Nothing," I managed to say, forcing a laugh. "Zoned out for a second." I tried to piece together what just happened. It felt exactly like hitting play on a video a half second before you were supposed to. I needed to break the script. I needed to prove it was just a weird brain fart. So instead of saying what I'd seen in the vision, I said, "Thinking about that bear seemed pretty stressed out for a cartoon." Tessa gave me a weird look, but she smiled. "Okay then." I felt a small sense of victory. See, it was nothing. I reached for the glass of water, extra careful this time. My fingers wrapped around it cool and solid, but as I brought it toward me, a jolt, like a tiny electric shock, went up my arm. My hand spasmed, the glass tipped, and cold water spilled across the coffee table, soaking a magazine. We both looked at the puddle, then at each other. Clumsy, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. Owen, you're white as a sheet, Tessa said, getting up to grab a towel. You sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I helped her clean up the water, telling her I was just tired, that work was stressful. But later that night, as I lay in bed next to her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, I couldn't sleep. I could feel it deep inside my head, a low, silent hum, a vibration that felt like it was shaking my teeth. The static had started, and I was completely, terrifyingly alone with it. I woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. My first thought was, Wednesday. I had a big project deadline and I needed to get an early start. Tessa walked into the bedroom holding 2 mugs, a smile on her face. Morning, sleepyhead, she said. You looked so peaceful I didn't want to wake you. A cold dread washed over me. She had said that before. Not last week, not last month. Recently, very recently, the déjà vu was so thick it felt like I was choking on it. What day is it? I asked, my voice raspy. It's Tuesday, silly, she said, handing me a mug. Big day for you at work, right? I stared at her. Tuesday. It couldn't be Tuesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. I lived it. I remembered it. I remembered spilling the water. I remembered the static. No, I said, sitting up. No. Yesterday was Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. Her smile faltered, replaced by that look of gentle concern I was already starting to hate. Honey, you must have had a really weird dream. It's definitely Tuesday. Caleb's got that playgroup thing at 10. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up, bright and unforgiving. Under the time, it read Tuesday, 8:15 a.m. I felt dizzy. I swung my legs out of bed and walked into the living room. The TV was on, tuned to the morning news. The anchor was talking about a traffic jam on the interstate, a multi-car pileup. The same report from yesterday morning. I remembered the detail about a truck spilling its cargo of oranges all over the highway. A moment later, the anchor said it. Oranges rolling across 3 lanes of traffic. I went through the day in a fog. Every conversation was an echo, every event was a rerun. I knew Tessa would suggest pasta for dinner. I knew Caleb would want to watch the same cartoon about the talking dog. I knew he would trip on the corner of the rug at exactly 3:42 p.m. I watched the clock tick towards the time, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream, to tell him not to run through the living room. But what could I say? How could I explain it? At 3:41, I stood up. Hey, buddy, I said, my voice tight. Let's go build a pillow fort in your room. Caleb's face lit up. Yeah! He ran towards his bedroom instead of through the living room. He didn't trip. I felt a surge of relief so powerful it almost made my knees buckle. I could change things. I wasn't just a passenger. That night, after we put Caleb to bed, I told Tessa I was feeling sick. I couldn't face the couch, the TV show, the glass of water. The thought of reliving that moment again made my skin crawl. You've been acting so strange lately, Owen, she said, her hand on my forehead. You don't have a fever. Maybe you're just stressed. You've been working so hard. Yeah, I lied. Just stressed. I woke up the next morning. The smell of coffee filled the air. Tessa walked in holding 2 mugs. Morning, sleepyhead, she said. My heart sank into my stomach. It was Tuesday again. The 3rd Tuesday was when the migraines started. It began with the static, that familiar, awful hum. But this time it didn't fade. It grew, twisting into a sharp, stabbing pain behind my right eye. The déjà vu was constant, a roaring waterfall of memory that made it hard to focus on the present, or what was supposed to be the present. I spent most of the day in our darkened bedroom, a cold cloth over my eyes. Tessa was worried sick. She brought me water and crackers. She kept her voice low. She was the perfect caring wife, and that was the problem. Her concern felt rote. Her lines were always the same. Her actions were predictable because I had already seen them twice before. "I'm calling Dr. Miller," she said in the afternoon, her voice a worried whisper from the doorway. "This isn't just a headache, Owen. Something's wrong." I knew she would say that. I knew he wouldn't have any appointments. I knew she would hang up, frustrated, and say he could squeeze me in next week. I lived through the whole conversation from the other room, my head exploding with pain. That night I couldn't take it anymore. I had to tell her. I had to have someone else in this nightmare with me. "Tessa," I said, my voice weak. We were in the living room. I had forced myself out of bed. "We need to talk." I tried to explain. I told her about the days repeating. I told her I knew what she was going to say before she said it. I told her today was Tuesday, and so was yesterday, and so was the day before. She listened patiently, her face a mask of love and deep, deep worry. She held my hand. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "You're not well. The stress from your job, it's all getting to you. Sometimes when we're exhausted, our brains can play tricks on us. It's okay. We'll get through it." She wasn't listening. She was handling me. She was a program running a script labeled Comfort Distressed Husband. She was dismissing the single most terrifying and important discovery of my life as a symptom of overwork. I felt a chasm open between us. I was completely and utterly alone. The next Tuesday, the 4th or the 5th, I was starting to lose count. I gave up on trying to explain. I just tried to live. I tried to find the seams in the simulation. I focused on the little details. The way the light hit the dust motes dancing in the air. The specific pattern of the wood grain on our dining table. I was trying to find something real, something that didn't feel like a cheap copy of the day before. I spent the afternoon on the floor playing trains with Caleb. The migraine was a dull throb today, manageable. I let the simple joy of it wash over me. The click of the plastic wheels on the wooden track. Caleb's delighted laugh when the red engine would crash into the blue one. For a couple of hours, I almost forgot. I was just a dad playing with his son. "I love you, Daddy," he said out of the blue, leaning over to give me a hug. "I love you too, buddy," I said, holding him tight. And in that moment, the static roared. A memory sharp and brutal hit me. Caleb leaning just like that, but too far. The train track slipping under his hand, his forehead hitting the sharp corner of the coffee table. I reacted without thinking. I grabbed him, pulling him back from the table just as his hand slipped on the track. His head missed the corner by an inch. He looked at me, confused. "What did you do that for?" "Careful," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't want you to get a bonk on the head." He just shrugged and went back to his trains, but I was reeling. It was different from the spilled water. I hadn't just predicted it, I had prevented it. I had intervened. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't just a prisoner. Maybe I could be a guardian. Maybe my curse was to know the future of this single repeating day, and my purpose was to protect my family from all its tiny hidden dangers. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark of the living room long after Tessa had gone to bed. The hope I had felt earlier was curdling into something else. Fear. I had saved Caleb from a bump on the head. But what if something worse was coming? What if the day kept repeating because it had to until some terrible final event was allowed to play out? I looked around the apartment, this place I had once thought of as a sanctuary. Now it felt like a stage, a set designed for a play that was performed over and over for an audience of one. And I was the only actor who knew it was all fake. I needed proof, not just for me, but for, I don't know who, for the universe. I needed one solid, undeniable piece of evidence that would survive the reset, a message in a bottle thrown into the ocean of tomorrow. I walked into Caleb's room. He was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling softly. On his windowsill, a collection of little plastic army men stood guard. I picked one up, a green soldier, his plastic rifle broken off at the tip. I held it in my palm. It felt real. It felt solid. I went to our bedroom, opened my sock drawer, and buried the little green man deep in the back under a tangled mess of black and gray socks. I checked my phone. 11:58 p.m. I lay down in bed, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't close my eyes. I just watched the numbers on the clock tick over to midnight, waiting for the world to reboot. I woke up to the smell of coffee. For a single blissful second, my first thought was Wednesday. Then the cold reality crashed back in. The memory of the little green army man buried deep in my sock drawer. I didn't move. I just lay there listening. I heard Tessa walk into the bedroom. I heard the clink of ceramic mugs. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "You looked so peaceful I didn't want to wake you." The words were just noise. My entire focus was on the drawer across the room. I sat up and took the mug from her hand, my movements stiff. "Just tired," I said. I waited. I waited through the morning routine, through the news report about the traffic jam and the spilled oranges, through Caleb's breakfast. I waited until Tessa was in the shower and Caleb was sitting on the living room floor, engrossed in his cartoons. My heart was a cold, heavy lump in my chest. This was it. I walked into our bedroom. The air felt thick, charged with a strange energy. I went to my dresser, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle. I pulled the sock drawer open. It was just socks. A tangled mess of black and gray, but nothing else. I dug my hands in, frantically searching, my breath catching in my throat. I pulled everything out, throwing socks onto the floor. The drawer was empty. My legs felt like they were going to give out. I leaned against the dresser, my head spinning. I stumbled out of the bedroom and into Caleb's room. He didn't look up from where he was playing on the floor. I walked to the window, my eyes tracing the line of the sill where the moonlight had been last night. And there it was, standing in its designated spot, perfectly in line with the others. The green army man, his little plastic rifle still broken at the tip. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall. The proof didn't make me feel certain, it made me feel insane. My mind scrambled for an explanation, anything to hold on to. Did Tessa find it? No way. She'd have to have gone through my personal drawer in the middle of the night and known exactly where to put it back. It made no sense. Did I move it? Did I get up in the middle of the night, sleepwalking, and put it back myself? Am I losing time? Having blackouts? The thought was terrifying. The idea that my own body was betraying me, doing things without my knowledge, was almost worse than the alternative. Because the alternative was impossible. That the world had reset. That time had folded back on itself. That an object had teleported from my drawer to the windowsill by a force I couldn't comprehend. People don't think that way. The human brain isn't built to accept that kind of reality. So I was left with two options. Either I was completely and utterly losing my mind, or the laws of physics had decided to take a personal vacation inside my apartment. I didn't know which was scarier. After that, I couldn't trust anything, especially myself. The Tuesdays continued. I lost count. Were there 5 more? 10? The days blurred into one long, continuous loop of the same conversations, the same meals, the same cartoons. My confidence was gone. I second-guessed every action, every memory. Did I really just have that conversation with Tessa? Or am I remembering it from a previous loop? Did Caleb really just say that, or is my broken brain playing tricks? I stopped trying to find proof. I had my proof, and it had proven nothing except that the problem was unsolvable. My family life dissolved. I was a ghost in my own home, my mind consumed by the mystery. I would sit at the dinner table pushing food around my plate while Tessa and Caleb's conversations faded into background noise. "Owen, you're a million miles away," Tessa would say, her voice laced with a worry that felt more and more distant to me. I was in a world of impossible soldiers and men who floated. How could I ever explain that to her? Every time I looked at her, at Caleb, a new terrible thought began to creep in. If the world could do this, if objects could move, then what was real? Were they real? Or were they just part of the same impossible magic trick? That thought was a poison, and it was starting to spread. I became obsessed with the only other impossible thing in my life, the gliding man. He was the only piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. Was he connected? Was he causing this? Was he some kind of hypnotist playing a sick game? Or was he just another symptom of my breakdown, a recurring hallucination I had cooked up to explain the unexplainable? He was my only lead. I started watching him not as a warden, but as a suspect. I would spend hours at the window trying to see him, trying to understand. The static in my head always seemed to hum louder when he was near. That had to mean something. One Tuesday, I was watching him from the living room window. He was across the street, a motionless silhouette. Tessa came up behind me and put her arms around my waist. "What are you always looking at out there?" she asked softly. "Just watching the world go by," I lied. "There's no one out there, Owen." I blinked. I looked at her, then back out the window. The figure was gone. The street was empty, but I had been looking right at him. "He was just there," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "A man in a dark cloak." Tessa's arms tightened around me. "Honey, there was no one there. I was watching too, please. I'm so worried about you." Did she not see him? Or was he never there at all? The doubt was a heavy pressing down on me. The glitches started getting worse after that. Small things at first. I was watching the figure from the window as it glided past a row of parked cars. As it passed, the reflection of the sky and the car windows didn't move. The clouds were frozen just for the few seconds the figure was in frame. Another time I was watching a flock of pigeons in the park near where it stood. The birds were all moving in a perfect synchronized loop, a 3-second animation that played over and over. Was I seeing things? Or was the world itself starting to fray at the edges? My obsession with the figure seemed to make things worse, as if by watching it I was somehow pulling on a loose thread and unraveling the whole tapestry. The breaking point came on a Tuesday that felt like the 100th. I had to get out of the apartment. I felt like the walls were starting to breathe, and I knew if I stayed in there, I'd go crazy for real. I needed to see normal people doing normal things. I needed to see if the world still worked right when I wasn't looking at it through a window. "I'm going for a walk," I announced, pulling on my shoes. "Owen, it's late," Tessa said, her voice tired. We'd had the same argument a dozen times. "Can't it wait until morning?" "No," I said, "it can't." I pushed past her before she could protest further. I didn't look at Caleb, who was watching from the living room doorway with wide, scared eyes. I just had to get out. I took the stairs, needing the physical exertion. I burst out onto the street. It was a bright, sunny afternoon. The world was alive. Cars were moving, people were walking and talking on their phones. It was all so perfectly, beautifully normal. A wave of hope washed over me. Maybe it was just the apartment. Maybe the sickness was in the walls, not in my head. I stood on a busy street corner waiting for the light to change, just letting the normalcy wash over me. And then the static started in my head, that low, familiar buzz. First, the sound of the city got weird. It didn't get quiet exactly. It just thinned out, like turning down the bass on a stereo until all you have is the whiny, screeching treble. That's when I noticed the mailman across the street had stopped walking. He was frozen, one foot on the curb, hand halfway to a mailbox. Then a woman pushing a stroller a few feet away from me also stopped. Just stood there motionless, my heart started hammering. What the hell? I thought, what is this? Then in perfect silent unison they turned. Not just them. Everyone, the mailman, the woman with the stroller, a businessman reading his phone, a group of teenagers who had been laughing a second ago. Every single person on that street stopped what they were doing and slowly, with a smooth, mechanical precision, turned their heads to face me. Maybe 30 people, all staring, and their faces were blank, completely empty. You know those old creepy dolls with the glass eyes? It was like that. There was no anger, no curiosity. There was nothing, just these hollow, soulless eyes all locked on me. They weren't people anymore. They were just things, and I was the most interesting bug in the jar. The silence was absolute. A whole city block, and the only sound I could hear was the blood roaring in my own ears. I stumbled back, tripping over a crack in the sidewalk. The spell, or whatever it was, broke. As soon as I moved, they all snapped back to normal, just like that. The mailman put the letter in the box. The woman started pushing the stroller again. The sound of the city rushed back in at full volume. No one looked at me. No one seemed to realize that for 10 solid seconds they had all been puppets in some horrifying silent play. I didn't run. Where could I go? I turned around and walked back to my apartment building, my legs shaking. The sickness wasn't in the apartment. The sickness was everywhere. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a breakdown. The world was broken, and I was the only one who could see it. I stumbled back into the apartment and slammed the door, throwing the deadbolt with a loud final click. My back slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, my head in my hands. Tessa rushed over, her face a mask of fear. "Owen!" "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I just laughed. a dry, humorless sound that scraped its way out of my throat. "Not a ghost," I whispered. "Something worse." I didn't try to explain. What was the point? The prison wasn't just the apartment, it was the whole world. The people outside weren't real, they were puppets. And the gliding man, the thing with the skull face, was the one pulling the strings. After that day, I didn't go out again. The loops continued, but I was done playing. I was a prisoner on death row, and my only remaining power was to choose the terms of my own destruction. I couldn't live in the lie, and I couldn't escape it. But I could break it. I could smash the dollhouse. The next Tuesday, I waited until late afternoon. Tessa was in the kitchen humming as she started dinner. Caleb was in the living room watching his cartoons. The scene was perfectly, peacefully domestic. It was the energy the creature fed on, and I was about to poison the meal. I walked into the living room, picked up the heavy oak coffee table, and threw it against the wall with a splintering crash. Caleb shrieked in terror. Tessa ran in from the kitchen, her face white with shock. "Owen, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I grabbed a floor lamp and smashed it into the television. The screen exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. The static in my head roared, becoming a physical pressure. The lights in the apartment began to flicker violently. "Owen, stop! You're scaring him! You're scaring me!" Tessa screamed, grabbing Caleb and pulling him back towards the kitchen. I picked up a dining chair and hurled it through the living room window. The glass shattered, and the sound of the outside world, the traffic, the sirens, went silent. The hole in the window didn't show the street below. It showed a swirling black void like television static. The illusion was breaking. The walls of the apartment began to dissolve, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The floor beneath my feet flickered, the familiar hardwood pattern wavering to show glimpses of dust-caked, neglected floorboards underneath. The loving scent of Tessa's cooking was replaced by the thick, choking smell of stale air and decay. Tessa and Caleb were wavering too, their forms becoming transparent. Their panicked screams stretched and warped, becoming a sound that wasn't human anymore, like a tape player slowing down to a stop. The world cracked like glass and then exploded into a billion points of light, leaving me in a screaming, silent void. I was falling, and then I landed. The landing wasn't hard, it was a dusty, wheezing gasp. I opened my eyes. I was in my own bed. The sheets, once clean and comforting in the simulation, were now gray with filth and damp with my own sweat. The air was thick and smelled of stale air and sickness. A sliver of gray light cut through a grimy window, illuminating my own bedroom, now a squalid prison I didn't recognize. My body felt alien. I was a skeleton held together by tight, papery skin. My throat was sandpaper. How had I survived this long? The question was a fleeting, impossible thought. Then a sound from the corner of the room, a soft, wet, clicking noise. My head turned slowly, every muscle screaming in protest. Unfolding itself from the deepest shadows was the figure. It wasn't gliding anymore. It was real and physical. It moved with a jerky, stop-motion horror, like an insect trying to remember how to be a man. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its gaunt, yellowed face a mask of starvation. The 2 points of light in its hollow eye sockets fixed on me. They burned brighter now, filled with a furious, hateful hunger. It took a slow, twitching step toward me, its joints popping. I was too weak to move, to scream. I could only lie there watching my death approach. This was it. I had escaped the dream only to die in the nightmare. It loomed over my bed, its shadow falling across my face. It raised a long, three-jointed arm, but then it stopped. It tilted its head with a sound like cracking wood. It seemed to analyze me lying there, a broken, useless thing. The fight was gone. The rich emotional energy it had been feeding on was gone, replaced by the flat, dull signal of near death. The meal was over. The toy was broken. With a final look of what I can only interpret as profound, ancient indifference, the creature turned away. It didn't need to be scared off. It was simply finished with me. It flowed to the wall, its body seeming to lose its solidity, becoming flat and distorted like a shadow in a warped mirror. It poured itself into a crack near the floorboards, a space no bigger than my thumb, and was gone. I was alone. I had won, and I was going to die here. The thirst was the first agony. The hunger was a dull, constant fire in my gut. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. In the quiet of that filthy room, my mind replayed the memories. The perfect Tuesday. I could see Caleb's face flushed with laughter. I could hear Tessa's voice. I could feel the weight of my son asleep on my chest. How do you mourn people who never existed? It's an impossible, crazy-making grief. My heart physically ached with loss for a woman who was never born and a little boy who was nothing more than a psychic puppet. I cried, but my body was so dehydrated that no tears would come out. I was just a dry husk, grieving for ghosts. I tried to call for help, but the only sound that came out was a dry, rasping click. I tried to move, to crawl, but my muscles wouldn't obey. Life was happening just a few feet away on the other side of the walls, but it might as well have been on another planet. The sun set on the first real day I'd experienced in months. I lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city waiting to die. Then the sun rose again. I was still there, weaker than before, my hope dwindling to nothing. I had survived the monster just to starve to death in its lair. It was on the afternoon of that second day that a new sound cut through my delirium, a hard, official knock on my apartment door. Bang, bang, bang. I thought it was another hallucination. A memory. Police! A man's voice yelled. Request for a wellness check on Owen. The voice was real and was loud. It was from the world I couldn't reach. I tried to answer but couldn't make a sound. I heard another voice, the building manager, saying something about not having heard from me in weeks, that my sister called. There was the sound of a key in the lock. The door swung open, flooding the filthy room with the bright, clean light of the hallway. A uniformed officer stepped in, his face shifting from professional readiness to shock as he saw the state of the room and the skeletal man lying in the bed. He didn't see the monster that had just slithered into the walls. He just saw a man who had suffered a catastrophic breakdown, wasting away in his own apartment. My sister's worry is what saved my life. That simple, mundane act of love from the real world was the only thing that could have stopped it. I woke up in a hospital. The world was a blur of doctors and nurses, of clean sheets and the steady, rhythmic beep of a machine. A cardiologist came in one morning. He had a clipboard and an air of detached professionalism. "Good morning, Owen," he said, his eyes scanning a paper on his clipboard. "We've analyzed your EKG and echocardiogram results." He looked at me over the top of the chart. "You have a severe case of non-ischemic dilated cardiomyopathy. Your heart's left ventricle is significantly enlarged and the muscle wall has thinned, which is causing systolic dysfunction. He paused, letting the technical terms hang in the air before translating. Basically, your heart is weak and it's struggling to pump effectively. We're attributing the primary cause to the state of prolonged malnutrition you were in. He made a note on his chart, and for a second I thought that was it. But then he continued, a slight frown appearing on his face. What is atypical, however, is the accompanying electrical disruption. The arrhythmia is complex. We're seeing patterns that we can't fully account for, even with the severity of your condition. He tapped his pen on the clipboard. For now, our focus is on stabilization. We'll be starting you on a regimen of beta blockers and diuretics to manage the symptoms. I just nodded. He saw the creature's footprint. That atypical electrical chaos was the scar tissue left behind by the parasite, a phantom fingerprint that no medical textbook could ever explain. The worst part was the psychiatrist, a kind woman who wanted me to accept that Tessa and Caleb were manifestations of a detailed delusion, a coping mechanism my mind had created. She wanted me to kill them all over again. She wanted me to let go of the only proof I have that any of it was real to me. I met with her this morning. I told her I was starting to understand that Tessa and Caleb weren't real. I told her I knew the memories were just part of the sickness. I saw the relief on her face. She told me I was making a breakthrough. That acceptance was the first step to recovery. She thinks I'm getting better, but I'm just learning how to lie. I'm building a new wall, not of routine, but of silence. I will take the medicine. I will do the therapy. I will learn to smile and nod and pretend to be a man recovering from a breakdown. I will tell them the monster is gone, but I will keep Tessa and Caleb safe inside me. Their memory is the only thing I have left. Story 2 ends here now. We drift into Story 3. My life was a gift. I don't know who to turn to. At this point, I'm not what's real anymore. Let me start at the beginning. A few years ago, my life wasn't going well. I was in debt and about to become homeless. I was at my wit's end and felt like I was about to do something stupid. One day I felt compelled to check my bank account. I don't know why. I was well aware that my account was well into the minus. Amazingly, when I checked my account, I had over $1,000. I didn't know where it came from, and I didn't care. I know you're supposed to report stuff this, but with the situation I was in, you can understand why I didn't. A few days later, I checked my account again. Over $10,000 now sat in my account. I didn't know who my mysterious benefactor was, and I was too happy to care. This went on for a few months, and eventually I had millions. I had a big house in a gated community and a few cars I had always wanted. Life was good and it was about to get better. Even though I was very wealthy, I still wasn't very social. Sure, I went to a bar a few times and bought rounds for everyone, but honestly, who wouldn't? I was at a fancy lounge one night. I was out on the balcony looking out over the city wondering if my luck would last. That's when I met her. That's the night I met Lilith. She was absolutely gorgeous, hair as black as night and wearing a black sequin gown. Probably the best dressed in the place. She came and stood next to me at the balcony railing and we hit it off immediately. It was like she appeared from nowhere and wasn't even interested in the party and just wanted to talk to me. which, knowing what I know now, is most likely true. For a few years, Lilith and I lived together happily. She was perfect. She liked all the things I liked. Same food, movies, music, hobbies, everything. Honestly, it got boring sometimes. You need challenged in life. Having someone agree with you constantly is dull. We got on great. She met some of my family and they got along too. I wanted to meet her family, but she just said she wasn't in contact with them anymore. I decided not to press her on it because I figured it was a sensitive subject. The years went on. The money kept coming and Lilith was pregnant. I was the happiest I had ever been. I went crazy with decorating the baby's room and buying everything we would need. I even bought a new SUV to put a car seat in. A sports car exactly fit for an infant. When it came to baby names, it was the only time we disagreed. We found out it was going to be a boy and started thinking about names. I wanted to name him after my grandfather, however, she wasn't moved. Every time we talked about it, she was firm the boy's name would be Raziel. I figured it was because she was very gothish. I kind of liked it, truth be told. The time came. We went to the hospital and were sat in the maternity ward. After a long, exhausting night in my arms, I held my own flesh and blood. My son, Raziel. The night after the birth, I was sitting next to Lilith's hospital bed holding Raziel. I sat there looking at the two most important things in my life. I knew I would do anything for them. I felt like the luckiest man on earth. That's when it happened. The event that has shaken everything I believe to be real. The nurse finished checking on Lilith and left the room. Just as she left, the hallway lights turned off. The light in the room began to flicker and Lilith began smiling at me while giving me a Kubrick stare. I was too unnerved to even ask her what she was doing. I looked over to the door. A black mist began to form on the floor within the darkness of the hallway. I can't describe exactly what I felt when I saw this. It was like I was extremely hot, but extremely cold at the same time. My head and chest felt heavy. Out of the mist stepped a man in a sleek black suit. The mist enveloped him as he moved toward me. He walked slowly into the room and towards the chair opposite me. It felt like an eternity between each of his footsteps, which seemed weightless, but somehow shook the floor. He sat across from me and stared me down with his bright amber-colored eyes. Between the stranger and Lilith both staring at me, I finally pushed out some words. "Who are you?" The corners of his mouth curled into a crooked smirk. "I have many names, most of which are forgotten. Some are muttered in times of weakness, others in damnation." I could barely hold myself together. Oh my God. Not quite. He leaned forward in his chair. "Do you like your gifts? It was you? The money? Don't forget your family, dear boy. Are they not the best gift? What are talking about? Don't you hurt my family. Oh, I would never harm them, especially young Raziel here. How do you know his name? I chose it." I looked to my son in my arms, then to Lilith, still gazing at me unblinking. "What do you want from us? Why do this? The money for all those years. Lilith? Is Lilith a gift too? Of course. Did you not ask for this? In your times of darkness, did you not ask for assistance? You prayed to many, but I alone listened. Who the fuck are you?" I was sobbing at this point. I had no idea what was happening anymore. "I'm simply a businessman. I'm here to collect on my part of the deal." "My soul?" He laughed to himself. Not this time, no. He gestures towards my son. I am merely here to see Raziel here. He reaches over and gently gives Raziel's tiny hand a shake. He smiles at my son and leans back in his chair again. Listen carefully to me. Ensure the safety of this child. Your life will continue as it has these past few years. You will remain wealthy. Once I leave, everything will be as it should. I don't care about the money anymore. My family is enough wealth for me now. Don't be foolish. Disregarding a gift from me is very unwise. He stands up from his chair and looks down upon me. Treasure these moments while you can. There will come a day when I return for the child. His destiny lies elsewhere. And with that, he walks out of the room and dissipates as he reaches the hallway. The lights return and everything returns to normal. I turn to Lilith, who seems to back to her ordinary self. Babe, I could destroy a bacon cheeseburger right now. Her smile fades as she sees me, probably still a wreck. Babe, what's wrong? How did she just ask about food at a time like this? Does she not remember what just happened? I still doubt it was real sometimes. I never mentioned it to Lilith. I don't want her to think I'm crazy or even worse. That it was real and she knows exactly who that man was. I still get nightmares about it. I've even noticed that anyone I interact with feels like they're on a script. They're way too nice. Neighbors I don't like smile and wave when I drive past. Creepy body snatcher type stuff. I write this as I look over Raziel in his crib. He's sound asleep. He's perfect. Too perfect. He barely cries or makes a sound. He's unsettling. I don't know how it's possible, but I don't think he's even mine. Story 3 ends here. Now, listen closely to story 4. I left my home, but it keeps calling me back. A few weeks after graduation, one of my professors got me this job. Said it'd be good for me. Get out of your hometown, see new places, work instead of sitting at home every day. I thought it was a good idea. I'd almost burned through every friendship I had back home. And my family wouldn't stop bothering me to find a job and get out of their ass. I had a new girlfriend too, and she made me want to change. Made me want to be better. So I packed my stuff, left everything in my old home and moved here. A small coastal town that exists mostly to sell boat rides, sightseeing tours, and overpriced souvenirs to people on vacation. It's the kind of place that doesn't feel real in the off-season. Too many empty hotel rooms, too many fake smiles, and me, stuck behind a desk answering phones. They gave me a phone to carry around. Told me to always answer it. At first, the calls were normal. Tourists asking dumb questions, families booking day trips. Guys calling at 2 a.m. to cancel their boat tour because they're hungover, that kind of thing. But somewhere in the second or third week, the calls started changing. I can't remember exactly when. The routine makes every day blur together. Even the first week felt like a lifetime. One night, the work phone rang just past midnight. I answered because I needed to. My boss says I have to pick up unless I'm asleep. The voice on the other end sounded like someone I used to know, back home. This wasn't some tourist trying to cancel a tour. This was a friend I haven't talked to since I left. "Why didn't you pick up before?" they asked. Their voice was gritty, buried under static, like the call was coming from somewhere far past bad reception. I checked the screen again. Private number. I told myself it was a glitch or a dream. Something stupid. I hung up, turned the phone off, but the calls kept coming. Sometimes it was friends I stopped talking to. Sometimes it was people I didn't even know, but they knew me. The phone started ringing at random times. 311, 442, 159. Voices slipping through the line like they were stuck halfway between here and somewhere else. My head always filled with static after these calls. I opened them anyway. I was scared to disappoint my boss. One call came while I was standing in the kitchen staring at my personal phone because I didn't know what else to do except wait for calls. Can't play games, I might miss a call. Can't watch a show or a movie. The Wi-Fi in my apartment is shit. The work phone buzzed and I answered without thinking. The voice on the other end sounded like me. Not exactly, but close enough. It sounded rusty, tired, like it was already dead but didn't know it yet. "You left," it said. The words weren't angry, just resigned, like they'd been wanting to say them for a long time. "You left us back here, just lying around. We are fading without you." I tried to say something, but the line clicked off before I could. Then my ears started ringing so loud I thought they were bleeding, but when I checked, there was nothing. I was fine, and it was right. Because the truth is, when I left home, I didn't just leave my town. I left people without saying goodbye. Didn't even call to say I was moving. I left friendships unfinished. Not that they were working that well to begin with. I left versions of myself behind that I didn't want to be anymore, and now they're calling. The other calls came fast after that. I got a call from them again. I don't know what they are all different, but they all sounded similar yet different still. One of the voices was hollow, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I think he was taking a second to cry after every word he said. Must be nice, having someone who gives a shit if you're still breathing or not. Then silence, like he was waiting for a sorry, or I think he just wanted me to be there for him. But I hung up. After that call, I thought my head was going to burst into soup made out of brain stuff. My ears started ringing again, and I heard crying coming from seemingly nowhere. But this time, my brain was in pain, like it was its first time feeling it. Another call. His voice was sharp, cruel. "You think you're better now?" he asked. "Because you left?" His breathing got heavier on the other end. "You're not better. You're just far away enough to pretend you are." After each call, my headaches and ears got worse. This time it stopped after an hour, I think. I couldn't even get to my bed. I just fell flat on the floor, holding my head, puking. Another night, the phone rang again. I was sweating before I even answered, felt my every muscle tense up. When I did, I swear I felt something tear inside my head. I'm not kidding, it was a real sensation, like my forehead muscle just ripped away. "You could have stayed," he whispered. "Could have stayed and dealt with it. But you left it. You left it here for it to keep hurting us." The line crackled, but I could hear him gritting his teeth. "I'm still there," he said. "I'm still in that place, still rotting in it, and it hurts, while you're out there pretending you're new, different, better." My vision flickered in and out like a bad signal, static in my ears, black spots crawling at the edges of everything. When the phone met with the ground, I was already throwing up in the sink. My vision kept tilting sideways like the floor was trying to roll me off. The pressure behind my eyes built up so bad I thought they'd pop out of my skull. I've started losing track of what day it is. The job feels fake now, like I'm working in a cardboard cutout of a town. No one here stays. No one here remembers you when you're gone, except for the phone. It never forgets. It remembers every version of me I tried to leave behind, and it knows I'll always answer. Sometimes I think about getting rid of it, turning it off for good, throwing it around just for it to always appear near me again and keep ringing. Last night the phone rang again. Battery was dead, screen black. No number, no caller ID. Just those stupid answer or decline buttons glowing on a screen that shouldn't have been working. I answered anyway. It wasn't one voice this time. It was all of them layered on top of each other. Some yelling at me, some crying, some laughing maniacally, some just whispering. But they all stopped after a while and started talking at the same time in the same monotone voice. It was my voice, not the one people hear. The one you hear when you're talking to yourself. We didn't get to move on. We didn't get to start over. We stayed exactly where you left us, still trying to figure out which one of us is real. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. I tried to hang up. I couldn't. The last thing I heard was a voice. My voice, all angry, screaming, and had a static tone to it, yet somehow clearer than the other voices. Like it had been waiting for the right moment to cut through the noise. It said, "You can't run from us. We are you. We will be here forever, waiting for you." I don't know how long I've been sitting here in silence since that call. Now that I think about it, it's too silent. I didn't hear anything, not even a single crack. Only my breathing. I think my ears finally gave up. The phone is still in my hand. I think it's ringing again, its screen almost broken, all cracked up. I can't hear it. It's not even vibrating. But I can feel the call coming in. I've been feeling it for days, weeks. It didn't stop even for a second. Fuck. How long has it been since that call? For how long have I been sitting here? I can't stand it anymore. I think I'll answer it. And this time I'm not sure I'll come back from it. Story 4 ends here, and now we enter the fog of Story 5. I left my home, but it keeps calling me back. A few weeks after graduation, one of my professors got me this job. Said it'd be good for me. Get out of your hometown, see new places, work instead of sitting at home every day. I thought it was a good idea. I'd almost burned through every friendship I had back home. And my family wouldn't stop bothering me to find a job and get out of their ass. I had a new girlfriend too, and she made me want to change, made me want to be better. So I packed my stuff, left everything in my old home and moved here. A small coastal town that exists mostly to sell boat rides, sightseeing tours, and overpriced souvenirs to people on vacation. It's the kind of place that doesn't feel real in the off-season. Too many empty hotel rooms, too many fake smiles, and me stuck behind a desk answering phones. They gave me a phone to carry around, told me to always answer it. At first the calls were normal, tourists asking dumb questions, families booking day trips, guys calling at 2 a.m. to cancel their boat tour because they're hungover, that kind of thing. But somewhere in the second or third week the calls started changing. I can't remember exactly when. The routine makes every day blur together. Even the first week felt like a lifetime. One night the work phone rang just past midnight. I answered because I needed to. My boss says I have to pick up unless I'm asleep. The voice on the other end sounded like someone I used to know. Back home. This wasn't some tourist trying to cancel a tour. This was a friend I haven't talked to since I left. "Why didn't you pick up before?" they asked. Their voice was gritty, buried under static, like the call was coming from somewhere far past bad reception. I checked the screen again. Private number. I told myself it was a glitch, or a dream, something stupid. I hung up, turned the phone off. But the calls kept coming. Sometimes it was friends I stopped talking to. Sometimes it was people I didn't even know, but they knew me. The phone started ringing at random times. 311, 442, 159. Voices slipping through the line like they were stuck halfway between here and somewhere else. My head always filled with static after these calls. I opened them anyway. I was scared to disappoint my boss. One call came while I was standing in the kitchen staring at my personal phone because I didn't know what else to do except wait for calls. Can't play games, I might miss a call. Can't watch a show or a movie. The Wi-Fi in my apartment is shit. The work phone buzzed, and I answered without thinking. The voice on the other end sounded like me. Not exactly, but close enough. It sounded rusty, tired, like it was already dead but didn't know it yet. "You left," it said. The words weren't angry, just resigned, like they'd been wanting to say them for a long time. "You left us back here, just lying around. We are fading without you." I tried to say something, but the line clicked off before I could. Then my ears started ringing so loud I thought they were bleeding, but when I checked, there was nothing. I was fine, and it was right. Because the truth is, when I left home, I didn't just leave my town. I left people without saying goodbye. Didn't even call to say I was moving. I left friendships unfinished. Not that they were working that well to begin with. I left versions of myself behind that I didn't want to be anymore. And now they're calling. The other calls came fast after that. I got a call from them again. I don't know what they are. They are all different, but they all sounded similar yet different still. One of the voices was hollow, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I think he was taking a second to cry after every word he said. Must be nice, having someone who gives a shit if you're still breathing or not. Then silence, like he was waiting for a sorry, or I think he just wanted me to be there for him. But I hung up. After that call, I thought my head was going to burst into soup made out of brain stuff. My ears started ringing again, and I heard crying coming from seemingly nowhere. But this time my brain was in pain, like it was its first time feeling it. Another call. His voice was sharp, cruel. "You think you're better now?" he asked. "Because you left?" His breathing got heavier on the other end. "You're not better. You're just far away enough to pretend you are." After each call, my headaches and ears got worse. This time it stopped after an hour, I think. I couldn't even get to my bed. I just fell flat on the floor, holding my head, puking. Another night the phone rang again. I was sweating before I even answered, felt my every muscle tense up. When I did, I swear I felt something tear inside my head. I'm not kidding, it was a real sensation, like my forehead muscle just ripped away. "You could have stayed," he whispered. "Could have stayed and dealt with it, but you left it. You left it here for it to keep hurting us." The line crackled, but I could hear him gritting his teeth. "I'm still there," he said. "I'm still in that place, still rotting in it, and it hurts. While you're out there pretending you're new, different, better." My vision flickered in and out like a bad signal, static in my ears, black spots crawling at the edges of everything. When the phone met with the ground, I was already throwing up in the sink. My vision kept tilting sideways like the floor was trying to roll me off. The pressure behind my eyes built up so bad I thought they'd pop out of my skull. I've started losing track of what day it is. The job feels fake now, like I'm working in a cardboard cutout of a town. No one here stays. No one here remembers you when you're gone. Except for the phone, it never forgets. It remembers every version of me I tried to leave behind, and it knows I'll always answer. Sometimes I think about getting rid of it, turning it off for good, throwing it around just for it to always appear near me again and keep ringing. Last night, the phone rang again. Battery was dead, screen black, no number, no caller ID. Just those stupid answer or decline buttons glowing on a screen that shouldn't have been working. I answered anyway. It wasn't one voice this time. It was all of them layered on top of each other, some yelling at me, some crying, some laughing maniacally, some just whispering. But they all stopped after a while and started talking at the same time in the same monotone voice. It was my voice, not the one people hear, the one you hear when you're talking to yourself. We didn't get to move on. We didn't get to start over. We stayed exactly where you left us, still trying to figure out which one of us is real. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. I tried to hang up. I couldn't. The last thing I heard was a voice, my voice, all angry, screaming, and had a static tone to it, yet somehow clearer than the other voices. Like it had been waiting for the right moment to cut through the noise. It said, "You can't run from us. We are you. We will be here forever, waiting for you." I don't know how long I've been sitting here in silence since that call. Now that I think about it, it's too silent. I didn't hear anything, not even a single crack, only my breathing. I think my ears finally gave up. The phone is still in my hand. I think it's ringing again. Its screen almost broken, all cracked up. I can't hear it. It's not even vibrating, but I can feel the call coming in. I've been feeling it for days, weeks. It didn't stop even for a second. Fuck, how long has it been since that call? For how long have I been sitting here? I can't stand it anymore. I think I'll answer it, and this time I'm not sure I'll come back from it. Story 5 ends here now. Settle in for Story 6. I was paid to report on violations, not alchemy. I get back in my car with the box of cloves and the candle I snatched from the disposition pallet. I just sit there for a moment, letting the silence thicken, trying to gather my thoughts. I absent-mindedly turn the key in the ignition and head toward the freeway. I can't believe I almost let a few scribbled lines on some boxes drag me back to everything I walked away from. I made it real clear to Thomas I don't take jobs that have anything to do with demons. I flick the blinker on as I merge onto the on-ramp. I need to calm down. In all fairness, this wasn't even real witchcraft. If anything, it looked like someone was dabbling in alchemy. Technically not witchcraft, but same ballpark as far as I'm concerned. Either way, I wasn't paid to solve that. I was paid to get proof, and I got it. Still, I can't help but wonder who's using alchemy and why. What's the end game? I take the next exit and pull into a gas station. I grab the clipboard from the passenger seat and flip through the mold reports. Looks like every moldy shipment was signed off by the same guy, Jim Bear. Says here he used to work in non-con, the department for items too bulky or fragile for the conveyors. I bet his name's in the candle report too. Just as I'm reaching for the next page, my phone rings. I answer without checking who it is. Hello? Jamie, just checking in. How's it going? It's Tommy. How much do I tell him? I don't want to tip my hand too early. I don't even know how much he's keeping from me. I hate thinking it, but I can't rule it out. Is that doubt I hear in your tone, Thomas? I say, trying to sound like I'm setting up for a punchline. I got the proof of them ignoring protocol, and I have evidence of what might be causing it. I knew you'd knock it out of the park. The client only wanted one of those, and you got both. His voice is too smooth, like he's testing me. Where do you want to meet up? I ask, then follow up quick. And am I getting paid on delivery, or do I have to wait for a check to clear? I forgot you like things up front. Usual spot. Coffee's better this time of night anyway. When I take jobs, I have one rule. One I live and die by: trust nobody. It stings not being able to trust Tommy, but this is a job. Personal feelings stay off the clock. I pull into the cafe parking lot. With me are the mold report and the evidence box. I order 2 coffees and take my regular seat by the back window. As I sip, my mind drifts, not to my mom, not to high school. This time I think about my cousin, the one who grew up in my house. One day his mom dropped him off and never picked him up. After that I called him my brother. The last clear memory I have of him. I made him breakfast. It was a week after I turned 18. Mom had been committed to the state hospital, and we were staying with our grandparents. Once I knew I could go, I told him I had to leave. That Grandma would look after him and Grandpa would make sure he had what he needed. I was gone before the coffee finished brewing. I haven't seen him since. I hoped I might at least run into him at the funeral home during Mom's viewing. No luck. Maybe he left too. I sigh and let the memory slip back into the dark. The bell over the cafe door rings. I glance up. It's Tommy. He's holding an envelope with a noticeable bulge. That's something, at least. He walks over, we shake hands, and I motion for him to sit. For getting the evidence in the report, you earned a little bonus, he says, sliding the envelope across the table. I take it and hand over the box with the report on top. Thanks. You're not gonna count it? At least open it and pretend, he says, almost whining. Let me gloat for hooking you up. This is why I don't do business with friends, I tell him. I do the job, I get paid. If I count it in front of you, that's disrespect, like I think you'd stiff me. I didn't mean it like that, he says, suddenly defensive. Then how did you mean it? He looks at me hard, like he's weighing something. Look, you've been gone a long time. Nobody could get a hold of you. Things changed. The kind of jobs you want, they're not easy to find anymore. What are you talking about? I ask, even though I don't want to know. You fucked up big time when you left. That cousin of yours, the one you left at your grandparents', he sold your secrets. And not just to moody teens like you used to when you were one of them. He went to bad places, talked to worse people, people you knew. I see the heat rising behind his eyes. Bullshit. He didn't know anything I was doing. The words taste bitter as they leave my mouth. Then why did he have a lighter? Tommy grabs the box and report, then stands. I'll call you in the morning. Fuck. I'm going to have to show my hand after all. Someone is using alchemy at that warehouse. I just let it sit there. Tommy sits back down and stares daggers at me. What do you mean someone is using alchemy? Before there was chemistry, there was alchemy, where witchcraft used herbs and shit for rituals. Alchemy used them for their property makeups. Combine stuff and see what happens. 9 times out of 10, alchemists kill themselves breathing in poison they didn't mean to make. What makes alchemy as dangerous as witchcraft to me is that if one of those potions goes airborne, a lot of people could get hurt. At least with witchcraft, you're putting your own life on the line. I get paid to bring you evidence. I'm not paid to start spewing out theories. I take a sip of my coffee and breathe deep in and out. That's why I wasn't going to say anything. Cut the shit. You delivered and got paid. The job is done. We're no longer speaking like we have a contract. Get me? He punctuates the point by finally drinking the coffee I got for him when I arrived. Some guy named Jim Bear seems to be doing experiments. Either the boxes or the stuff in them has a mold. They get shipped with a demonic candle, and something in the wax accelerates the mold growth. Must happen when the wax heats up even just a little. I can see in his eyes he's struggling with what I'm saying. You got all that from just one visit? Before you even clocked out for lunch, no less. I used to be good at what I did, Tommy. I used to be able to step into a city and tell you how many demons influence the population. What concoction the jackasses use to lure demons to them. Son of a bitch. I can feel the flicker of pride trying to ignite. I better check myself. I refuse to do that anymore. I won't participate in it anymore. Tommy is quiet. Not a loss for words kind of quiet, but something heavier. Then help me expose these bastards. You made everyone think you were untouchable. Then finally, when your secret got out, everyone wanted to try and be a desert son. I didn't even think about that. It was a stupid title I made up, something to sound cool. Coyote said I needed a name people would remember. I didn't think anyone would take it so serious. That's dangerous, and you know it. I downed the rest of my coffee and set the mug down a little too hard. Jaime, they already got your mom. The 6th story has come to an end. Now it's time to knock on the door of the 7th. I just needed access to the warehouse. When I was in high school, this town was nothing more than dirt and rocks. The medical offices were the only game in town. Nowadays, it's the birthplace and graveyard of warehouses. Where tumbleweeds once rode the wind freely, now they get caught on chain-link fences. I hate what they did to my home. Funny, all of a sudden I'm calling it home. I'm lying to myself. I live on an abandoned military base cursed by more than nuclear fallout. If I want midnight snacks, I'm gonna have to get a legit place. No more squatting. That's what I'm thinking as I step into a giant warehouse. The gig itself is legit. I needed access, so I called the temp agencies they work with, got my forklift certificate, and boom, I had a reason to be here. My real job? Report back to an OSHA agent about any violations. That's where my real skills kick in, watching which rules the company pretends to enforce and which ones they ignore. Years of breaking into offices and snapping pictures of financial docs gave me a good idea of how these places run. It's a simple job, basically above board, and most importantly, no demons involved. I'm helping people. At least that's the lie I tell myself. I don't really care about everyone's safety. They're adults. They know right from wrong. They also know that crossing the line gets you a pink slip. Something I don't have to worry about. If I get caught, I just play dumb. The warehouse I'm in is in my hometown. It's a small upstart operation supplying local shops with dry goods. The problem? The shops are getting moldy products. The shelf life on this stuff is supposed to be at least 3 years. I just need proof of mold, evidence it's being documented, and proof it's being ignored. This is gonna be fun. Like any other warehouse job, I go check out the forklift I'll be operating. I pretend to go over the safety checklist. Really, I'm watching everyone else, all of them getting on faulty equipment. I can tell the problem with each one just by how the driver starts it. When everyone's gone, I actually look at my checklist and see the last time anyone filled in the form was 2 years ago. I inspect my lift and head to the dry goods section of the warehouse. The production floor is pretty boring. Everyone seems to be following health measures, wearing their hair nets, gloves, masks, the whole deal. I pretend to start pulling down a pallet of rice. Shelf life is 2 years. I check a few more pallets and confirm they're all good. I head to the spices and herbs section next. On the way, I notice a pallet of candles in the disposition area. Some of them are broken, shattered, or cracked. A few are burnt. That's totally not suspicious or anything. I'll have to swing back and look into that. As soon as I turn down the aisle with the spices, I see loose leaves and powders everywhere. Not only that, there is rat droppings. I take out my phone and snap a couple shots. I head deeper into the aisle and notice the numbers are wrong. 1 or 2 boxes are missing. Easy to miss if you didn't have access to the inventory records. I double check and notice the sage and cloves are off by 2 boxes each. On further inspection, someone's drawn something on the remaining boxes. A circle made of lines. I snap a few photos of the boxes and the paperwork showing the numbers don't add up. At the other end of the aisle are the canned goods. I make my way down, and my nostrils get assaulted by the worst scent I've ever smelled. There are cans of vegetables busted open, turning gray, shining from a film of slime. It takes everything I have not to throw up. I take pictures quick and leave. When I think I'm safely away, I inhale deep breaths of air. Fuck this place, that was disgusting. Time to get some fresh air. I'm on the roof of the building. The breeze is nice. The desert always looks different from above. That's one of the cool things about this town, and that's the hill. That perspective is priceless. Focus on the mission, though. I can't get into the office through the doors. Those need key cards. Instead, I'll use the roof access. There are 2 entry points. One above the warehouse and one that leads to the server rooms. The server room needs to be cooled at all times. So, logically, they made sure HVAC has access to the roof as well. That access is only secured by a deadbolt. Easy enough. I'll make short work of that and walk right into the office, grab the HR files, and game over. If companies knew how easy it is to break into secure files, they'd never trust temp agencies. I should really be thanking my mother. As I pick the lock on the deadbolt, my mind wanders to when I was younger. My mom used to think people were coming into our house at night. So naturally, when you think someone is breaking in, you set booby traps. At least that's what came naturally to my mother. I used to help her set up those traps. Little did I know I was absorbing information. Weak spots in security, how someone can sneak in through a window, pick the lock to the front door, how to set up distractions from the real trap. My mother unknowingly taught me both sides. Hard not to laugh that those skills are finally coming in handy. I walk slowly, scanning the entire area for anything that looks like complaint files. A folder, a stack of paper, something. I walk over to a desk with a green folder on it labeled Disposition. I shrug and open it up. I flip through the papers and see spontaneous mold and snag that report. Right behind it is a report on used candles. I take that one too. As I slip the reports into my clipboard, the lights come on. I freeze and set the green folder down. I slowly move toward the back of the office. I hear a voice over a walkie-talkie. I bump a desk with my knee and knock over a phone. "Who's there?" a voice calls out from the other room. I step into view, hands at waist level. I got lost looking for the bathroom. The security officer looks at me hard. "How'd you end up in here?" he says, tone thick with suspicion. "There was an open door and I just walked in. It's my first day. I don't want to get in trouble. I need this job. My mom just died and I need to pay rent next week and still pay for her burial." That just flowed right out. The security guard nods toward the exit. "Be careful what doors you open around here. Some are better left closed." I head out, clipboard in hand. Back on the forklift, I'm reading the report on the mold. Says the products leave the warehouse perfectly fine. Every single shipment even went through an audit, an added step for quality control before it gets sent to the store. Photos of the shipments are included too. Odd there are markings on the outgoing shipment similar to the ones on the sage and cloves. Similar but not the same. I compare the photo in the report to the ones I took earlier. When you overlap them, they create a weak hex on the food. This just got weird. I told that bastard not to give me anything magic related. Hard to believe this was accidental. Or is it something worse? No real magic, and I'm seeing connections that aren't there, like my mom. Numbers shake the thought. Focus, think. The candles. There are candles in the photos too. I check the other disposition report. Looks like they've been finding those satanic candles, you know, the kind that disguise themselves as Catholic bullshit with burnt wicks. The candles started showing up a week before the mold. I remember a cult a few years back that tried to start biological warfare on the upper class in Victorville. Failed quick. They left pig carcasses all over town trying to spread swine flu. Idiots thought it came from pigs. Looks like I'm taking a box of cloves and a candle on my way out. Send them out for testing. I bet there's no real witchcraft going on. The wax in the candle must be activating mold growth on the box, and those circles are just marking the target product. I did my job. Gathered the evidence they need, showed they know what's going on under their nose. I get a nice payout, don't ask any questions, and I can finally ditch the Air Force Base. The seventh story fades with the sound of rain, but something darker now begins to stir. This is the eighth story. I think I was destined to serve evil. Hi guys, my name is Anna, name changed. I was born in Brazil. I am 18 years old, and everything I'm about to share with you has happened, and still happens, to me throughout my life journey and even now. So I was born into an evangelical family and grew up in the church. Since my mother's pregnancy, there have always been bad things happening around me. I know I've always been a very loved, wanted, and intelligent girl. And that draws a lot of envy from others, but there are certain things about myself that I still don't fully understand or that I used to blame myself for. I'm still in a process of self-recognition. Once, when my mom was pregnant with me, already with a big belly, someone who didn't like her and was jealous touched her belly and spoke words of curse over her. But my mom immediately rebuked it and life went on. Important detail. My mom is a woman of deep prayer and has a strong connection with God. Some years passed, and when I was around 4 to 6 years old, my mom had a dream where a demon was trying to enter our old house to possess her. But since my mom is so fervent in prayer, he couldn't get in. The demon then said, "Since I can't enter you, I'll enter the one you love the most." And immediately I screamed from my room saying I had a nightmare and that a man was trying to get me. As I grew older, 8 to 14 years old, I was always interested in horror stuff, ritual games like Ouija, the Midnight Man, and those kinds of things that I'd watch on YouTube. Once my parents even caught me watching that stuff. And it's worth mentioning that I hated going to church. I didn't like it at all, except when I was acting in plays. In one of those plays, we gathered for 2 weeks to interpret the story of a family full of problems who didn't know how to solve them. Both kids died in a tragic accident, and after that came the final judgment. I played the daughter. But during that time, there were several moments when I felt pursued or interesting in the eyes of these spiritual forces. My mom once saw a tall man all in black about 1.80 meters entering my room while I slept. She also saw my bedroom door handle turn by itself. Or I would be at my grandma's house. She lived upstairs above us. And when going down the stairs, I saw a black shadow standing at the door at the bottom of the staircase, just staring at me. Later, I also had moments with my church friends at my house, like kissing girls and stuff. And in the religious view, that was seen as very wrong and believed to attract bad spirits into our lives. Anyway, everything I did was always the total opposite of what my family wanted for me. When I turned 15 to 16, I developed a huge interest in Umbanda and had a big fight with my parents because they wouldn't accept or allow me to go to any of its ceremonies. And you know, these things scared me, to be honest. But not in a bad way. More like I knew the right path, but for some reason I couldn't follow it. I always felt aversion to the Christian side. I even tried Catholicism later, but again I couldn't stay. There was nothing keeping me in the church. Everything got worse when I moved alone to Europe. I ended up getting deeper into occultism, and this path fascinates me a lot. I started studying demonolatry, became interested in Luciferianism, made new friends, and started having conversations about these topics. I even tried contacting Lucifer himself. I remember making a simple altar for him. I didn't have much money or resources, but the energy became so dense that the room got cold even with everything closed. My body trembled without my control. That same day, I got a tattoo right in the middle of my chest with Lucifer's sigil, like a stamp in the center of me, as if saying I belong to him, even though I never made any pact or formal agreement. Sometime later, I even paid the priest who guided me back then to include my name in a collective Black Mass ritual, which is a satirical ritual that mocks a Catholic Mass to praise Lucifer and sever any Christian ties. That night after the Mass, I woke up from a dream I barely remember now, but I know a man was speaking to me in a language I didn't understand. And I answered him in that same language, completely conscious that I was speaking to him. I didn't feel anything bad, but I believe it was some sort of confirmation. After that, I stepped back a bit from the practice because I was going through personal and emotional issues and realized I couldn't deal with that kind of energy while feeling spiritually weak. My last experience wasn't long ago. I dreamt I was walking through one of those U.S. piers full of shops, restaurants, and with the sea on the side. But diagonally, I saw a man following me. I felt suspicious of him at first, but then I realized he wasn't going to harm me. I didn't see his face. I only remember he wore bright sunflower yellow tailored pants and light brown leather dress shoes, and suddenly he pulled me into a side hug like the casual kind guys give. And right then I felt this overwhelming heavy pressure on my shoulders. It was hard even to get up and believe it had just happened. But honestly, this whole thing fascinates me so much. I'm not afraid of hell or even believe in it, to be honest. I can't fully explain this feeling. Is it some kind of fetish? Not a sexual one, but a sort of pleasure in the power they give. An idealization, this craving for power, attraction, connection. On the other hand, I'm a little afraid of lowering my energetic frequency. But maybe that's just something time will tell. So, what do you say? Could this be something from past lives, or is it something that's here to stay for a long time? P.S. I think I kind of regret having explored all this. I'll always have respect and curiosity about it, but not to the point of getting involved again. These are things that need to be handled carefully. However, I believe that because I've always maintained respect and never mocked or disrespected this side, I've been able to carry on with my life normally without being seriously affected in a bad way. I'm now searching for other philosophies that make more sense to me.